Chink in the armor has long been a commonly used idiom in English, and it goes back for several hundred years. Chink in the armor means a weakness or a vulnerability. So maybe you're generally very good at something, but maybe there's something about it that you're not so good at, then that might be your chink in the armor. For example, the swim is the chink in my armor in the sport of triathlon. Okay? So chink in my armor means that this is my weakness. Okay? I'm not so good at the swim. I'm good on the bicycle and I'm a good runner, but I'm not as good a swimmer. So the swim is my chink in the armor. Now, the phrase itself goes back to the 1400s. So it goes back over 500 years to the 15th century. And it would be, at that time, a weakness in someone's armor that someone could use against him. European knights and soldiers used armor back then. There were no guns, there were no bullets yet. They were very near. But they were primarily using swords and bows and arrows. And if someone had a weakness in their armor, there would be a little bit of a chink in that armor. And they would be a weakness that could be used against you. If you have read the novel Catching Fire or Mockingjay, the second and third books in the Hunger Games series, the phrase chink in the armor is used quite frequently in both of those books, referring to, in Catching Fire, the weakness that they learned or they found out that they discovered in the shielding that they used. So they found a small hole. That was the chink in the armor, used quite often in the book Catching Fire, which is the sequel to the novel Hunger Games. In the 1600s, 200 years after it started to be, it was used literally to be a literal chink in the armor that you would wear. It started to become idiomatic, meaning that the phrase came to mean something different from the actual words, where it came to mean any kind of weakness someone would have. And in the 20th century, it became very commonly used, especially in sports, okay, but also outside the sports world as well, but very commonly used in sports. So we can say, for example, this team has good pitching, but hitting is its chink in the armor. Okay? So very good pitching team, but they don't hit very well. So hitting is their chink in the armor. So it's, they're a good pitching team, but they can't score runs. Okay? And we can say that about a lot of baseball teams, or vice versa. Maybe a team can score a lot of runs, but maybe the pitching is their chink in the armor. Now, this phrase has long been used in sports, but last year it did unfortunately become very controversial. There is a basketball player of Taiwanese descent by the name of Jeremy Lin. And his star was rising at the beginning of last year. He had some great games. Well, he had one poor game against the New Orleans Hornets. And a couple of writers and commentators used the phrase chink in the armor in reference to Jeremy Lin. Yeah. So when this happened, when it was used in reference to Jeremy Lin, it became very controversial. Yeah. Even though it has been used thousands of times on ESPN and in other sources with no controversy whatsoever, the difference this time, of course, though, is that Jeremy Lin was of Taiwanese descent. And unfortunately, chink is also, chink used alone, is an offensive term used in reference to people of Chinese or Taiwanese background. Okay? So people of Chinese or Taiwanese background, there are unfortunately words that we have that people use towards other people that are offensive, disparaging, done for the purpose of insulting other people. We've long had those words in English to many different racial groups, to blacks, to Chinese, to Japanese, and even to white ethnic groups like Polish, French, etc. And unfortunately, these are still part of our culture and part of our language and part of our history. So the word chink used by itself is an offensive term. It dates back to around the year 1900, almost 500 years after the original use of the phrase chink in the armor. There were unfortunately some people who said that this was a racist phrase used against Jeremy Lin. One of the people who used it has an Asian wife. Okay. Kind of hard to believe that that would be racist in nature, but many people criticized them for its use. So let's look at some examples. Okay. First we have, he hits very well against right-handed pitchers, but lefties are his chink in the armor. Okay, so we get a right-handed pitcher. This is true of many left-handed hitters. Okay. He's very good against right-handed pitchers, but does not do well against left-handed pitchers. Lefty is a slang term for a left-handed pitcher. So if he doesn't do well against left-handed pitchers, against lefties, that would be his chink in the armor. Number two, she is very good at most school subjects, but history is a chink in her armor. Okay. So she's good at science, she's good at math, she's good at Chinese and English and whatever, but not so good at history. So that is a chink in her armor. Now, notice here, a chink in her armor, we can put the object in here in the phrase as well, or we can put it before here, like his chink in the armor, a chink in her armor. If she has a chink, or we could say the chink. If she has a chink, that might imply that she has another chink in the armor, though not necessarily. Number three, our soccer team can score a lot of goals, but goalkeeping is the chink in our armor. Okay, so there's one weakness, so we can use the chink in, and again, you notice here, our armor. So our soccer team can score a lot of goals, but goalkeeping, a goalkeeper is the person in the goal who can use his or her hands to keep the ball out of the goal. Okay, the goalkeeper, and we say goalkeeping in general. So goalkeeping is the chink in our armor. This has been an installment in Word and Idioms Origins. 如果你还有问题，你可以上 FB 台中新英文美语，也可以上 YouTube TCNEEnglish。如果你在台中，你找英文老师，你可以在 FB 跟我联络。谢谢你收看。